Welcome, YouTube, to another Anime Mondays. As usual, this is your host, The Geek Live. Today we'll be doing a little bit of a tier list analysis of each of the major Naruto arcs and just see how they stack up to each other. But before we head out, let's not forget, definitely comment on down below on what you think is the best arc, and don't forget hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Without further ado, let's start off with the very first arc that we see within the world of Naruto, which is the Land of the Waves arc. Now, this arc right here, it really takes place as we see our main characters, more specifically Team 7, take on their first real mission as they head to the Land of Water, which is one of their neighboring countries. And we see them really encounter their first main real confrontation of the series, where they were tasked with really guarding the bridge builder and ensuring that his safety as he completes the bridge between their village and the mainland. Now, where the whole conflict of this really begins is when we see some of the Mist Village's rogue ninjas, namely Zabuza Momochi and Haku Yuki, really come out of the woodworks, and their whole mission per se is to really just kill this guy for their employer. And and we see it's kind of like a two-part type of arc, as we see as it revolve around the two major battles that takes place between Zabuza and Team 7. The first part, I think, is pretty interesting as we kind of get to see a bit of a this is how high level combat is supposed to look like, as well as we start to get a little bit of tidbit of knowledge into Kakashi's nickname, as he goes by Kakashi of the Sharingan, or Kakashi the Copycat Ninja. So I kind of like that. We kind of delve into a little bit of how that why he got that nickname, and just some of the stuff that he can do, and not only that, but just kind of see how a bit of teamwork is supposed to look like. And then later on, we see on the bridge during the second main battle, where we kind of see how Naruto gets his ninja way, and I thought that was pretty nice, kind of just sort of setting up Naruto as a character for the rest of the series. And overall, I think a little bit of story, some action, stuff like that. I think overall, I would probably give this a pretty good A tier here, as I think it's a pretty solid arc itself. Next off, we have the tuning exams arc, or should I say the first 70% of it. Um, with this whole tuning exam, we kind of see our protagonist find out what this exam is all about, and the promotion to the tuning or to the tuning level. And so we find out that this exam, three-part exam, written, survival, battle combat, and just to see a little bit of how everything works there. It's kind of a little bit of an interesting structure that we kind of see there. But but we first start off with the written exam, a little bit of a deception per se, as you're kind of forced to cheat off of other people and not get caught. So I thought that was a little interesting twist, and I kind of like that because it kind of reinforces that's what really a ninja is supposed to be, this silent, tricky, deceptive type of person. And I kind of like that little intricacy into it. And then we go into this survival type of part of the exam, and this is where we meet probably one of my favorite villains of this entire series, Orochimaru, and just to start to see a little bit of him, what his ideology is, what he's what his goals are, and I think it really starts to set everything up in motion, and and I kind of appreciate that. And third off, we kind of start to see a lot of the one-on-one battles that we that we get to see, and there's a few few good battles in here. I really like the Rock Lee and Gara battle. That was pretty good. But there's a couple of battles that I don't particularly enjoy. Soccer and that's a whole nother story. But overall, I think it's pretty good. Um, could there be a couple of things done better? Probably. Um, some of the fights I think probably needed to be reworked just a little bit to make them a little bit more interesting, but overall, not too bad. I would probably give it a solid B tier for this part. Now, however, the second part of the tuning exams, as it goes into the Konoha Crush arc, I think this is a lot better than the first part of the tuning exams. As we kind of see the the whole climax of Orochimaru's goals when it comes to really, I want to crush this village for just on a whim. I think there was a lot of good conflict, a lot of good battles, and I think the highlight here is just the whole Naruto Gara battle, which we were kind of hyped up to really encompass, and just showing more or less that power of protecting others kind of shine out there. And and overall, I think probably one of my favorite things is just the huge gargantuan battle that we see between Shukaku and as well as Chief Toad, Gamabunta. So I think for me that was pretty interesting. I would probably give this probably an A, maybe low A, but still pretty good. Next off, we have the Search for Tsunade arc. Within this arc, we see Naruto's new master, Jiraiya, really take him on a two-part trip, not only to teach him some new jutsu and make him a little stronger, but also to search for the fifth Hokage elect in terms of Tsunade, which happens to be the third Sannin, as we learn, and teammate to Orochimaru and Jiraiya. So overall, I think it's pretty decent. We got a couple of comedic bits, and for the most part, we get to start to see a lot more of Jiraiya, which is probably a lot of people's favorite character. Um, but I think it's pretty good. I'll probably give it a good solid B tier, probably. Um, is it better than the tuning exam arc? Not sure. I would probably rank it right behind it, but not much of a gap between those two. Next up, we have the Sasuke retrieval arc. So this whole arc really, I think, encompasses from the time that the Sound Four really comes to get Sasuke for Orochimaru's nefarious purposes to the point where Naruto and Sasuke really battles it out in the Valley of the End. I personally think that this is probably one of the best arcs in the series. Now, when it comes to this particular arc, there's just so many meaningful battles, and I don't think anything is really wasted a whole lot. Um, each battle really faces a lot of dire consequences of how do we overcome this obstacle, and how do we really win this battle without dying, and do we even give up our lives to really save another comrade's life? So I think a lot of those different dilemmas really come to life within this. And just the whole Naruto versus Sasuke battle, that's probably the hypest moment for me, at least within the original Naruto series. And and overall, I thought that battle was pretty good. Probably a lot of probably a little too much mixture of flashbacks and fighting, but overall it wasn't bad per se. Um, I would probably rate this a solid S rank for sure. So next up, we start to get into the Shippuden half of the series, and first off, we have the Kasakage rescue arc. So within this, we really start to get back into really learning more about the Akatsuki, which is this evil group of nefarious S rank ninjas, criminals who are really out for the not for the different Biju and Jinchuriki. So we're starting to see them really target Naruto a lot more, and we start to learn more about that group. Now, within this arc, we see that one of the first, or should I say, the second pair in of the Akatsuki members in terms of Sasori and Datara, we first see them here, and we see a whole line of how they come across, coming up to the village in the sand, what their plans for taking Gara, the Kazekage, and I think it's interesting how they have a little bit of strategy going in here, which I personally enjoy quite a bit. Um, so we see Sasori really taking care of the traps and everything behind the scenes so they can make a good quick exit while Datara takes care of all the flashiness, drawing all eyes on him while he takes Gar out and brings him back. So I think that was a nice little one-two punch, kind of like showing a lot of the pairing teamwork that you see within the, or should I say, most of the Akatsuki pairings. Overall, I would probably give it probably a low A rank, um, but good nonetheless. So next up, we have the Tenchi Bridge arc. As we start to round out Naruto's return from his 2 year training with Jiraiya, and we get a bit of an introduction into this as a play off of the last arc, as we're told that there's a couple of there's an Akatsuki spy that's working for Orochimaru. In terms of Kabuto, which we know from previous encounters, so we're like, oh, he was actually an Akatsuki spy. So that's a little interesting twist there. So as we sort of get into this whole thing, we start to see the foundation rear its head a little bit, start to make a couple of interesting relationships that Naruto has to make with his new teammates. Um, so there's a couple of interesting things here. I think when they get to the Tenchi Bridge, there's a bit of that revelation of that Kabuto did indeed used to work for Sasori, but he was able to rid his mind of that control spell, and so that little twist there, and just encompassing that bit of fight with Orochimaru again. He's still up to his villainous ways, but also we get to see a little bit of a reunion with Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, which has its decencies, I guess, but overall, I guess to me, this kind of felt like a halfway between the main story and a filler arc to me. So that's so my personal opinion. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I will probably drop it in the C rank as it does have a couple of decent twists and turnarounds and points in there, but I don't think it's as great as some of the others. So next up we have the Mortal Duo arc, where we see Hidan and Kakuzu in their two-part battle. First off against Asuma, Shikamaru, and their team. Um, and it's kind of interesting how they kind of play on the idea of that immortality in two different ways in terms of Hidan is more so in the traditional sense of immortality as he can't die short of malnourishment, and then Kakuzu plays off of that idea of immortality on in terms of just replenishing his heart and any missing organs and stuff. He just keeps replenishing and prolonging his life. So I thought that was interesting to see those two different senses of immortality. And then the other interesting part was just the whole, we get to see our second major character death here in terms of Asuma, and just seeing, I think the thing that makes it a little bit more interesting than the third Hokage's death earlier was the fact that we actually get to see how this death affects other people. Um, we get to see a snippet of life into Shikamaru's life and how he comes to grip with losing his teacher and probably one of his closest friends. So I really enjoy seeing that little slice of daily life. And then just a little bit later on, seeing Naruto's world training to overcome this enemy that Shikamaru has to grieve and come to terms with. So, and just seeing Naruto actually start to come to grips with some of the real technical terms of what it means to really learn and become a better ninja in terms of his getting better chakra control and actually learning how nature transformation actually fits into jutsu and really learning more about his own powers a little bit more. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and just coming to to, to real grips with that, and then just as as a little bit of a further down the road type of thing is really just how Shikamaru takes that grief of losing his master, his teacher, I should say, and how does he use that to fuel his motivation to get revenge and not let that revenge really control him, like how it kind of controls Sasuke in a way. Um, so really, just taking it out on Hidan and doing it alone, and just seeing how Shikamaru kind of grasped that sense of maturity, I think was pretty interesting. Personally, I would probably set it as a good A rank tier here. I would. I think for me personally, I would probably set it just before the Konoha Crush arc, as I kind of like it just a little bit more than some of the other stuff, but but everything in this tier is still pretty good. So next up, we have the Itachi Pursuit arc. So this whole arc really revolves around the Leaf Village sending out a massive unit to track down Itachi to not only get information about the Katsuki themselves, but to also see if they can use Itachi to lure in Sasuke so they can try to bring Sasuke back to the Leaf Village. And then this also, that whole thing, I think I understand the whole idea behind it, but I think that there wasn't a lot of interest in terms of how it was done for me. I think the main interest part of this was probably the Itachi Sasuke battle near the end of this whole arc. Um, that was pretty good. We get to see that culmination, and which I think was definitely one of the biggest highlights of the series, no doubt about it. And I think it was because of that final battle between the two brothers that probably saved this arc for me. It made it interesting, made it fun, and kind of closed this chapter on Sasuke's life. So I would say as a result, probably a low B. Next up, we have the Tale of the Gallant Jiraiya arc. So this whole mini arc really revolves around Jiraiya really focusing his efforts and saying, I found out that the leaders in the Hidden Rain village, the leader of the Katsuki, I need to go there investigate, find out who this leader is. So Jiraiya's a pretty skilled infiltrator and tracker, so he's able to get into the Hidden Rain Village, no problem. Now, after a little bit of investigation, Jiraiya finds out that the leader of the Akatsuki, Pain, is his actual former trainees from during the Second World War. And within, so he finds out exactly what happens to Yahiko, Nagato, and Conan, and how Yahiko died, and that really caused the other two to delve into this whole path of evil that they're really falling down. So we see that not only is Jiraiya coming into grips of what is happening, but we're also seeing him come to grips of I need to figure out all I can about them, and I need to make a decision on the Child of Prophecy, which is a little bit of a ideology goal that he's had for many years. Of I think that this kid Nagato with the Renegon, I think he might have something to do with this prophecy that I've received. I need to see if I can set him on the right path, and if I can't, then I need to perform my duties and just end him, because I cannot let this happen. And I thought that was kind of beautifully done, and just see this whole coming to grips. This battle was, I think, was pretty good, well done, and just the ending to Jiraiya, which is probably one of the most beloved characters within this series. Just how his death is really done. I think it's done pretty beautiful, and just seeing how that affects Naruto tremendously. I think that's part of the reason why Asuma's death affected Shikamaru a little bit earlier. I think that was done at the right time, so Shikamaru knows how to really help Naruto in his time of need and help Naruto move on from this great despair that he has. So honestly, I would probably put this as a definite S tier rank. Next up, we have the whole Pain assault arc. Now, within this whole assault, we see the leader Pain, after recovering from his battle against his former sensei Jiraiya, just really marching into the Leaf Village and taking it by storm, using a two-prong attack in terms of half of his paths of pain really just causing as much flashy destruction as possible, while the other half of his six paths really just infiltrating the village, finding any and all information about Naruto and his location, and just seeing how Tsunade and the other ninjas within the Leaf Village just come to deal with. We're under attack. How do we stop this threat, and how do we repel this threat? And just when Pain finds out what he needs to know, he more or less nukes the village, and just seeing the village on the brink of destruction, pretty much. Heavy casualties, heavy destruction, and the likes that we haven't seen in canon or on the screen. So I think that was done very well, and just seeing how Naruto comes back, he makes a grand entrance, and you can tell from what he knows, he's mastered his Sage mode, and he does not look happy whatsoever. And just seeing him go toe to toe with Pain, taking down his paths one by one, making progress, I thought was really good. And then just seeing Naruto really snap once Pain makes it look like Hinata is going down for the count. Um, just seeing that eight tail sprout, and then kind of seeing Minato, the fourth Hokage, come back and just say, "Yeah, I'm helping you out here, and by the way, I'm your father. Just seeing that revelation really is what did it for me. I thought it was pretty good. I would definitely rank this a solid S tier, probably near the top for sure. Probably the top for sure. Next up, we have the Kage Summit. With this, I think it was, I think it was fine. Kind of see the whole Kages come together and just determine what do we do with the Katsuki now, which kind of stems from Sasuke going rogue and really making it seem like he killed Killer B, which is the younger brother per se, the Raikage. And some of the conflicts there, we see that it's really the first time that we see all of the major leaders really come together in one room and seeing what their personalities are like, and just how that comes to really how that plays off of one another. Um, I kind of like that because it kind of represents kind of like real world in a way. Um, a lot of times, folks. A lot of times you'll see that some folks might not like other folks, but in the when they first meet with one another, but just see how they really overcome their heavy personality differences to work together. And I kind of like this, and just seeing what the Kage are capable of. Obviously, you see some heavy fighting between the Raikage and Sasuke. You see Gaara joining in, what Inoki can do, and so on and so forth. So overall, I thought it was pretty good. Um, I would probably rate this probably a high B per se. Um, just seeing that whole political type of thing really coming into play here. Um, so I think this is probably a good point part for here. So next off, we have the last arc, which is probably the biggest arc by a landslide, which is the Fourth World War. Now, this definitely has a bit of a different thing for me. There was a few things that I really love about the war, and a few things that I hated about the war. A couple things that I do like about the war is I really love the strategy used by both sides. Um, we see Toby really coming in and working with Kabuto, and just how they're really using the Zetsu to transform into the allies to throw some confusion into them at night, reanimated ninja to really take care of them, the allies during the daytime, and doing some night raids and the like. Um, just seeing how some of the strategies of the allies, really in terms of their mo- moving a couple of their platoons around to really take care of the beach before coming back around. I really like a lot of the strategy, but I could be biased because I am interested in military strategy. But what can you do? But but as for some of the stuff that I thought weren't really good, was I think there were probably a little bit too many reanimated ninja. I feel like it should have just been left with some of the big hitters like the Five Kage, reanimated Akatsuki, folks like that. But there was a lot of like no name reanimated ninja that we got a lot of time for, and it really wasn't needed per se. But I think probably the biggest thing was the ending of the war in terms of how Kaguya was handled. Was Madara was really hyped up for the entire show from beginning to end, and we really see him come back to life in the war and just wreak havoc with the entire allied shinobi, like one man taking out thousands of shinobi by himself, and just being so strong that he is pressuring Sasuke and Naruto heavily. Um, and then seeing him actually start to win for once, a bad guy winning for once when he really pressures them and he really initiated his Moon Eye plan. I really appreciated seeing that. It's just now we're down to just Team Seven. Everybody else has been either wiped out or under this Moon Eye plan. So what what are four people going to do against one really strong person? Until out of nowhere, Black Jetsu just stabs Mother in the chest and says, "Yeah, I've been controlling this since for eons now. For my mother Kaguya, don't worry about it." I was like, that's not a twist that I like. It's like this this enemy is coming out of nowhere. We know nothing about. Really taking out somebody who's really hyped up for the entire show. I don't think I don't think Kaguya was necessary whatsoever. I think that if Naruto and Sasuke and the rest of Team Seven just came up with some good plan to take care of Madara, I think that would have been much better than Kaguya. So I think because of that, I would put the Fourth World War as a low B. I think without the Kaguya twist, and I think if they had also cleaned up with some of the fights and some of that other stuff, I think that this would have been definite A tier at least. But with that, definitely post down in the comments below. What do you think each of these arcs would be? I would love to hear more about what everybody think um, their their thoughts on this would be. And without further ado, we'll call that another Anime Mondays in the books. Make sure y'all keep your lives geeky.